Okay, so it starts really at last year. So I'm about 2 days away from the anniversary of my mother passing away. And my mother
Sorry to hear that.
passed away. Thank you, thank you. It was unexpected. It was difficult. It was traumatic. It was a lot of things. And so I started off the year with a lot of grief with that, grief with my roles changing. I work with youth a lot, and I had a daughter that had but been a mentor that became a daughter, and so transition there and with relationships and kind of just some things changing there, business changing, life changing. And so last year was really just like trying to figure out how to make my way through grief and all of these other things that are happening at the same time. And when my mother passed away, before, like, the Lord had been talking to me about to everything there's a season. And for me, I'm like, oh, okay, the Lord's telling me things are going to change. We were in the midst of some difficulty, and there's things that I have been waiting on the Lord to do for like a few years, or maybe even a decade. And I'm like, okay, the Lord's saying that these things are happening. But right at the tail end of me thinking I'm going into newness and it's going to be kind of all this good, it really came at the beginning of a lot of devastation. And so it was hard to go from being very excited and very like looking forward to all of these things, and then feeling like, man, I'm back at the bottom. And I want to be excited because I know you're still saying that these things are going to happen, Lord, but like my heart's devastated. Life is completely changed. My dad, my brother, like, we're just trying to figure everything out, or at least trying to submit to God's sovereignty and what has happened, while also trying to figure our own hearts out and stuff. And so my year was really a lot of that. And so coming into this year, it's like, okay, well, I have a business. My youth program's running. I'm trying to pivot my business into something else. I'm still trying to deal with the emotional, I don't want to call it fallout, but just the emotional and kind of spiritual grappling that comes with the things that I've experienced the year before. And so um it's really just a continuation of the year, right? Of just learning how to, when things are shaken and when things are outside of our control, how do we then kind of find our stability? Like, and so I did too much talking that I don't remember the initial question, but that's kind of like the context of like the craziness. And like, I don't know what's happening. Relationships are changing, my roles are changing. And I'm trying to figure out how to leave everything behind and become something new, to walk into the newness, while also trying to hold on to what was a little bit. And so it's like you said, you have no idea. Like, you try to control it, you try to make sense of it, but when it's happening, you're really learning that you kind of have to learn how to let go of all of the old stuff to let something become new. And that's just not comfortable. That's not comfortable.
No,
It's unpredictable. It's hard. It's really
yeah.
hard.
No, well, sorry to hear about your mom for sure, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing that. Like
Thank you.
that's real though. You know what I mean? And I can understand like I can understand generally speaking, like just this idea of like walking into newness sometimes like not all change is because everything was good. And so
Yeah.
like how have you though it sounds like you and your family have still like you're leaning on the Lord through this time. How has your relationship with the Lord been affected or challenged
Mm.
kind of as you go throughout this process?
Deeply. um, I think before I talk more about that, the I think what I enjoy about myself and what I appreciate is a lot of times I can see what the end thing is supposed to produce. So I have no power over my mother passing away and all of these things, but I understand that if I can endure long enough, or if I can try to find my way through at the end, I'll be able to comfort somebody else, or I'll be able to know the Lord in a new way, or I'll be able to the crushing will bring a greater anointing, or a greater opportunity. Like, I know that nothing is lost in the Lord, but at the same time, I had never had anybody close to me pass away, and my mother was the closest person to me. My
Yeah.
mother could call me and be like, "Hey, girl," and I'd be like, "What's wrong?" Not because there was anything that would indicate it. She was like, "What you talking about?" And I'd be like, "What's wrong?" She was like, "I didn't even change my voice," and then she would go to be like, "Oh, well, maybe I'm feeling down," or and so like me and my mother were close, and we were close because we were friends. We were close because my mom discipled me and my gifts. My mother was probably one of the people who I know the most, who just spent a lot of time with the Lord and waited on the Lord and lived her life just uncompromising for the Lord. She had a strong personality, but she had strong gifts. And so I was able to watch my mother, like the Lord would tell my mother something she may, if she could, she'd share it with me, and then we'd wait to see if it happened. She was like, we need to see if this is me or the Lord. And my mother just never missed, not because she was perfect, but because when people are that close and consistent with the Lord, you get to see that. And so having lost my friend, my comforter, my counselor, all those things in one person. My parents are pastors, and I minister at my parents' church too. Is like there's that big shift. And so initially when this happened, I was like, Lord, what is going on? Like how, like I was just shell shocked, right? I still feel very much so like eclipsed. That's the only way that I can explain. It's like immediately life is different, and the permanence of this. It's not just that I can see the end goal, but it's like now I have to learn how to live with something that is never going to change. And so
Yeah.
my the year's been tough emotionally. Like I felt in a lot of kind of torment mentally and stuff with a lot of things, like trying to go to the Lord about stuff and trying to wait on the Lord for answers. And I asked the Lord anything. I'd be like, why is this happening? Like I was like, Lord, you don't lie. So how come we're
Mm.
having these conversations about, you know, the Lord is bringing us into this? I was feeling like the Lord was going to do some healing in in some areas, like in our family, or just like bringing us to a different level, just in our relationships and communication with each other. I said, but how at the beginning of all of this happens? And so trying to trace God's footprints and fingerprints on things was hard. And it's still hard, but I had thoughts that I had never had before. I was like, y'all, we in the matrix. I was like, this is a simulation. And I was like, I go from being so sure to feeling like I'm not so sure. And so I questioned a lot of things, but I took my questions to the Lord. And I still don't have a lot of answers. And I still feel periods of doubt or periods of just confusion. But I've also seen too much to be like, nah, this ain't real. Like you see people healed, you see God's hand in your life in very tangible ways. And it's just, you can't go back. But now you're trying to figure out how to move forward. And for me, it's been surrender. Like grief is really about surrender. Like, okay, I might not have all the answers. This sucks. This is uncomfortable constantly. I have to continue to surrender. I have to learn how to wait on the Lord. And I don't think people want to talk about that as much, right? Like that even in the most difficult times of your life, God can be using it to prune you, or to bring you to like to or to bring you
Yeah.
into deeper consecration. And I'm tired. Emotionally, I'm tired. I don't want to consecrate, or I don't want to, and so it's been a lot of that. It's been a lot of, this is how I feel. This is what I see the end goal is, but I'm too tired. Or hey, maybe just coming to you and talking is enough, Lord. Or it's really trying to figure out how to place myself and evaluate myself in my relationship with the Lord. What is he asking of me? What does obedience look like? What does healing look like? What does grief look like? What does the fear of the Lord look like, while also trying to grapple with God? Like, because I'm wrestling with God, but God ain't wrestling with me.
I like that.
So,
Yeah.
so
Wow. No,
yeah,
that's powerful. That there's so much in what you said, and especially in the fact of like what I love is that I can see the impact that your mom had on you, and like sometimes we don't understand like what legacy is, and like that impact and how powerful someone's example can be, like that godly example. So no, I thank God for her in that sense, and thank God for you, just being vulnerable enough to share something that personal. Um,
yeah,
you also kind of talked a little bit about, um, you mentioned that you took on, if I heard you right, a mentee and became like a mother. I
yeah,
want to say you said that, and this
yeah.
happened
I did.
around the same time. Do you mind sharing a little bit just about that dynamic of kind of now
Mhm.
it seems like you're maybe in that role, in that mother role,
Mhm.
and kind of how you're approaching that during this time of change.
So it actually goes back a little bit further. So she's 20 now. I used to be a part of a youth program. Working with young people is what I definitely feel called to. And during that time, as I was exiting that youth program, she had started coming to church with us and doing a lot of things. And eventually kind of became a part of our family. Like I heard in prayer one day, like the Lord was saying, like, hey, she's gonna come live with you. And I was like, I'm still living with my parents because I've just started my business full time and there's things going on. I'm like, what is like I knew that the Lord was going to bring young people to me to help be a mentor and be a support to them. I didn't think that the Lord was going to do that while I was single, because why would the Lord willingly give me a whole child when, there's benefit to having that balance, right? But I was living with my parents. And so I didn't say anything. And a few months later, some situations happened and she ended up coming to live with us and stay with us. And um, I became a full-time parent. I went from a mentor role, to kind of this parent role, of a teenager with her own history, with her own upbringing, with her own challenges. And it was up until my mother passed away, I explained it as being the most sanctifying thing that I've ever done. Because when you're a person that's used to helping people, like, you're used to being a voice of reason and trying to talk and walk with people through stuff, but it's different when you're with someone all the time, right? Like, you're married, people are married, people have children. The dynamic shifts some. Your love and your desire to help and support people doesn't change, but then you realize, like, okay, like, there has to be a little bit more accountability because you're in my space and I'm in your space, or you can't
Yeah,
really hide from the things that you are doing. That's me as an adult, her as a child, my parents, and so it was it was the most beautifully challenging thing I've ever done. And I think the biggest thing is that for her, it's like the Lord shows you something different to give you an opportunity to make some different decisions, and hopefully that those seeds planted begin to sprout up in your life either soon or later. And for me, it's I'm called to young people, and so the Lord is using this to sanctify me and to strengthen me and to give me the tools and the things I need also as I go out, and he sends more people to me to do the work that I have to do. And a lot of that also informs my youth program, because young people in social media is such a large thing. I got to live firsthand what it looks like, with the young person and the influences that social media has, how people interact with it, how they interact with it, how it hurts them, how it helps them. And so those things, it was a challenge because everybody also deals with grief differently. So she lost a grandmother when my mother passed away, but everybody's coping mechanisms are different. And like I said, it came on the heels of a very challenging year prior. And so, and she's becoming a young adult. So you 19, 20, you want to be out here, you trying to figure it out, you trying to figure yourself
yeah,
out. And so it's just it's challenging. I felt like last year I also grieved, that relationship in that sense. But I mean, when I went to college, my mom grieved me going to college. So, it's just a
for
transition
sure.
of everything.
Got it. No, that's. I mean, look, that those are some impactful relationships, right? And I guess I'm curious. How did you, like you mentioned, being a person that kind of helps people and people come to you? Where did that come from? Like, where did that desire? Or how did you find your way to understanding that part of your purpose? Because it
Mm,
seems super clear.
yeah. So I think part of it's calling and part of it's God using some hurt for his glory. I think
Yeah,
I've always been a very like disciplined and focused person. I've always been a very kind and like empathetic person. I think that some of the giftings that the Lord had, like, you just, people talk and you understand what's going on even though they're not talking about what's going on. And so for me, I think that there's some things that the Lord placed in me where it was just like that was a part of it. But then also when I was young, I remember being hurt by a friend unintentionally, but I felt kind of rejected and abandoned by her. And I remember as a kid saying, you're 8 years old. I don't want anybody to ever feel like I felt. And I think for a long time that distracted me from kind of the deep focus I used to have. It made me very like, I want to make sure that nobody's left out. I want to make sure that everybody is taken care of. And so, um, with the leading of my mom often, like, girl, you got to have some wisdom in your compassion and things like that. But it's been really difficult over the years for me to kind of separate those things. And so I think that my heart to want to help people and for people to have a space and a place, came kind of out of that. And just growing up and having my mom and having really really dope people behind me, like supporting me, loving me, encouraging me, telling me about myself. um I think bringing those things together, just kind of made it always really clear to me that I just want to be able to help people. Like, for me, it's very fulfilling to help people. But in my adulthood, and especially in this last year, it's been the Lord like reminding me, like, you can help people, and there's some training and preparation, but then there's time to execute. And you have to lock in and allow people to be where they're at, or allow people to make the decisions that they make. And you can't fix it. You're not Jesus. You're not the Holy Spirit. You can't come in and fix. And so I've also been learning how to pull back a lot. so that I can make sure that I'm getting done the things that I need to get done, so that I can impact the way that the Lord wants me to, and not just based off emotion, right?
Yeah. Have you found that to be difficult? Like when it's time for you to pull back and not help someone? Because it seems like that probably comes naturally for you.
Yeah.
Has that been difficult? Have you had some trial and error with that of like knowing when to do it, when not? Like how's that process been?
Absolutely. I think I'm much better than what I was. I think that this year has taught me that I don't have no time to waste. I don't have time to waste, and I think that what has informed me maybe staying around longer or having a hard time tearing away is it's kind of like, that people need support even if they don't think they need support. That they need it. And I think because I, I'm a gap filler. Like in high school I played sports that I'd play point. I wouldn't be a shooting guard. I'd have no jump shot, but I might be point. I'd be a small forward. I'd be over here.
Right.
I played volleyball. I was a outside hitter. That they put me in setting. In track, I'm doing this. Like in work, as I'm working jobs, they're placing me in a lot of different places. I think that when your skill set can be used broadly, you get used to being used broadly, and the difficulty sometimes is realizing that even though you can do a lot of things well or a lot of things great, even that there's time and place for you to only do single things at the greatest level. And so I have struggled with that. I've struggled because you don't want to be mean to people, but or feeling like, man, if I stick around long enough, I can help. I can be there when you do fall because everybody's gonna fall. But the Lord just basically told me, like, listen, if you put yourself at the center of everybody's help, then that's making yourself idle. You're making your ability to help people um, more effective than the Holy Spirit doing His work in them in their timing. And so it's not as hard as it used to be, but emotionally you still grapple. But decision wise, I make the decision like, hey, I can't do that. But internally you be like, ugh. But
Yeah.
after a while, that'll die down.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Like, the whole, my purpose being to inspire God's people.
Yes.
And not that I'm always executing that perfectly, right?